As devastating as it is, you have to remember it's not about you until they're gone. As long as they're there, it's about them. And what you have to remember, when a loved one comes to you and they're diagnosed with such a thing, spirit matters.
Whether you're a patient, survivor, or caregiver, you don't have to walk the cancer journey alone. Let's leave the past behind and come into this present moment together to be educated, inspired, and enlightened. This is Mind, Body, Spirit, Cancer. Welcome to Mind, Body, Spirit, Cancer, a new podcast presented by the American Cancer Society. I'm your host, Pat Croce, and this week's guest is one of my absolute favorite people to interview. I met him all the way back in the 90s when he was a sports reporter for the Philadelphia Inquirer, covering the 76ers, first as a beat reporter and then as a columnist. After a successful career in print media, he made the transition to television and is now one of the country's most renowned sports analysts and commentators. These days, he is the star and executive producer of ESPN's First Take, an analyst on NBA Countdown, and the host of the Stephen A. Smith Show podcast. And if you're not a sports fan, you also may know him for his recurring role as Brick on General Hospital. He is a father of two, a New York Times bestselling author, and the hardest working man on television. Please welcome my buddy, the one and only Stephen A. Smith.
What's going on, big time? How are you, Pat? Long time. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Stephen A., for being here, because I know your
man,
schedule is so crazy. However, before we get started, I love to start this show with just a moment of stillness to get everyone out of their head and into the now. So if you'll join me and just place your attention on the sound of this Tibetan bell. Beautiful. Now that we know everyone is in the now, Stephen, before I start the interview, I want everyone to know that Stephen and I go back almost 30 years. I've known Stephen A. before he was the Stephen A. Let me give you an idea. It's 1996. I just take over the Philadelphia 76ers. We're not that good. As a matter of fact, we were really lousy. And just imagine being interviewed by a horde of press. They surround you at every practice. They surround the coach. They surround Allen Iverson, the team. And then they disperse. And one reporter who happened not to be in the crowd, but circling like a shark ready to attack, that's when he would bite. He would hit with the most intense questions. You're like, whoa, this was Stephen A. Smith. Stephen A., please tell everyone, what did it take to get to that gig? What did it take in your background to work to the diligence and vigilance to make sure that you could cover the 76ers as a beat reporter way before the columnist?
A lot of hard work, a lot of dedication, a lot of sacrifice, and just this understanding that no one owed me anything, and anything that I wanted to capture, I was going to have to go and get, because it wasn't going to be given to me. My advantage was, and still remains, the fact that I have a passion for what I do. I don't consider it a job. I consider it a career. I've always been able to decipher the difference between a job and a career. A job is doing what you have to do to sustain or elevate your quality of life. A career is doing what you want to do, and it just so happens to do those things. And so for me, I was never punching a clock. I was always somebody that was ready to get up and go. It was nothing for me to get up at 7 in the morning and stay up and work until 1 or 2 the following morning. That's what came with being a beat writer for the Philadelphia 76ers, especially covering Allen Iverson, because he was a separate beat in and of himself, as you know better than most. But my passion for the game, my passion not to have the regular old 9 to 5 job where you're punching the clock and you're just treading your way through the day or whatever. That level of passion for what I do, that definitely came into play. And I knew that I had my eyes on covering the NBA from the very, very start of my career, from when I was an intern in Atlanta at the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, to the Winston-Salem Journal, to the Greensboro News and Record. Obviously, I was a student at Winston-Salem State University, writing for the school newspaper. I started out as a high school writer for the New York Daily News. I came to Philadelphia as a college sports writer, first covering St. Joe's, but only for 2 weeks before they elevated me to the Temple beat, covering John Chaney, and then covering Temple University basketball and football. No matter what was going on through my career, my eyes was always, always, always on covering the NBA. It was what I was determined to do, and I was locked in and zero focused, and that's what comes with it. That's the obligation that comes with it.
Stephen A., since the last time I saw you, you released your book, Straight Shooter, a memoir of second chances and first takes. Love the title. In the book, you tell your own unique story of overcoming adversity to become the successful television personality you are today. The book is dedicated to your mother, and it's a beautiful testament to how much she means to you. Can you tell us a little bit about your mom, who she was, and the huge influence she had on you throughout your entire life?
My mother uh, is the greatest woman that I've ever known. And she passed away from cancer after a long bout with cancer in 2017. It was the night, it was the morning of game one of the NBA Finals between the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Golden State Warriors. Obviously, it was incredibly devastating. It still remains incredibly devastating. And it took me a long time to write the book. The reason why the book was dedicated to her is because when ESPN had let me go in 2009, Pat.
Stay there, stay there, stay there. This is, before we go back to your mother, this star that we see on TV right now was let go. Is this your intention of second chances?
Yes, second chances, first takes.
Take people through, why were you let go?
Well, I was let go because I thought I had a bloated view of myself. Um, Nobody's perfect. Certainly, ESPN is not perfect. I mean, to this day, I have executives apologizing to me for making the mistake of letting me go, because I'm never insubordinate. I'm never unprofessional. I'll speak my mind, but I'll do so respectfully. I'm a team player. When we go out in public, I don't believe in throwing my teammates under the bus, and they're my teammates. Anybody that I'm working for is my teammates. You know how that's my mentality. It's always been my mentality, Pat. You know that. But at the end of the day, although I once had 4 jobs and then I woke up one day and it was zero, although I felt that it was grossly unfair and still remain having that feeling to this day, it doesn't absolve my contribution to my demise at that particular moment in time. I was Stephen A, man. I was on bus stops. I was on, in Philadelphia, they had me on bus stops and the side of buses and stuff like that. Well, in ESPN, had me in commercials. They gave me my own television show. I was on NBA Countdown, and I was a household name. And I thought that the screaming of my name, the recognition and the notoriety that I had, validated my substance and my cachet. And so in 2008, when we were negotiating my contract, I thought I was worth considerably more than they were willing to pay. And I snubbed their deal. I rejected it. And when I rejected it, all hell broke loose, because from that moment forward, I often use the phrase "the fix was in." And what I mean by that is that the die was cast. There was no way they were intending to bring me back. And then the next year, when my contract was approaching its expiration, I was informed 2 months, nearly 3 months ahead of time, that I would not be returning, that I had 2 weeks left to be on the job, that I would be paid through the month of June. I was notified in April of 2009 that when my contract expired on June 30th of 2000, of that same year, that I would not be returning. And I was told that it was not a unilateral decision. So that gave the impression that there was a multitude of individuals who were incredibly supportive of me being gone. And I went home. I was devastated. Prior to that, I pulled over on the side of the road, and I couldn't even remember whether I cried or not. I just buried my face in my hands. I was devastated, and I went home and I laid around. I went. I shouldn't say home. When I mean home, I meant to my mother's house, where I grew up in Hollis, Queens. And I went to the same old bunk bed that I grew up in, and I just laid there for 2 days. And my mother finally came in, and she presented me with from she always she knows how I love my bagels, well done, little extra butter. Sorry about that, Pat, because I know you want me to eat better, even though I'm in shape now. I've lost about 25 pounds. But my toast with my scrambled eggs, my hot tea, milk and sugar, and on a tray, she had a handheld mirror that she left on the tray. And I was like, what is this? She said, that's for you when you're ready to look at yourself.
Ooh.
And at that moment, she told me and highlighted all the things that I had done. She said, no, you weren't insubordinate or whatever, but you were defiant. You were argumentative, away from them. You had the wrong kind of attitude. Don't try to tell me that you were able to disguise that and hide that totally, that they never saw it. I don't believe that. And she was highlighting a lot of the things that I did. And she said, they are not innocent, but neither are you. You brought this on yourself, and you own a level of accountability for this. So what are you going to do about it? What are you going to do to make up for it and resurrect yourself and show the world who you really are, instead of this young man that's acting like a kid, that's constantly petulant and complaining and bringing your negative energy around people. You wouldn't want that around you. Why should they want that around them? And it stung like hell to hear her say that. But that was my mom. She was always a straight shooter. And that's why the title of the book, years later, was Straight Shooter, because that was who she always was. And that was just her personality. And when I finally returned to ESPN 2 years later, people were clamoring for me to write a book, write a book, write a book, because they knew so much stuff had happened and they wanted to know so much about the worldwide leader. And I never, ever, ever wanted to write a book, but I thought about it. And my mother knew that I didn't have the greatest relationship with my father. And she was very private. And she looked me in my face and she said, you promised me one thing and you promised it to me right now. You will never write a book about your life until I'm dead and gone.
Oh,
Don't you think about it. And I made a promise to her in 2011 that I would not write a book until she passed away. And so when she passed away, I spent a couple of years where I was depressed. There's no way around it. I was going to therapy and stuff like that.
Stephen, tell us about when you say depressed. I would like you to define depressed.
I couldn't find joy anywhere. That's the best way to put it. I have two beautiful daughters, Samantha and Nyla, who I'm absolutely in love with. They're the joys of my life. But my mom was everything to me. And I tried to figure this out, and going to therapy. Just I went to therapy just so I could stop crying,
Mm.
because every day for 2 years I was crying every day, and I would go to this very, very dark spot. And there were times when I was literally on the air for ESPN debating on First Take, and somebody would be sitting right across from me, whether it was Max Kellerman or somebody else, and I would go like 30 seconds to a minute where I wouldn't even hear them or see them. All I saw was pure darkness. And my entire brain, my mind, my disposition, everything was about my mother. And in seconds, I just felt myself crumbling. And then I would just get up, say I had to go to the bathroom, and I'd close the door and I just look in the mirror and like, you got 4 minutes between commercial break, for the commercial break between segments. You got 4 minutes to get yourself together. And I'd get back and I'd do it. And it was all because she was gone. And then when I thought about it and I was trying to figure it out, it came to me when I was sitting in front of one of my friends, and I said to her, I said, I've never been more regretful of not being married in my life, because it all makes sense now. I said, when you're married, if you're a man, Your mother essentially is passing that baton, that mantle to your wife. And that is the person that's going to safeguard you for the rest of your days, et cetera, et cetera. When you don't have that, and you have as wonderful of a mother as I had, she's the one person on the planet that loved me unconditionally, loved me consistently, without any inhibitions, any hesitancy, or anything like that. And I knew it no matter what. And she was gone. And as I reflect and I remember them lowering the casket into the ground, which is obviously, as we all know, it doesn't get much more painful than that. Even when you lose a loved one and you see them near the funeral service, etc., it's nothing like watching that casket lowered into the ground for the first time. And my soul crumbled and I was gone. And I was that way for a couple of years. And I finally figured out it was because I looked at her and I said, the one person in this world that loved me unconditionally is gone. And in my mind, that meant I'll never have that again, ever in life. And it was just a lonely, lonely feeling that it took me years to deal with.
So tell us a little about this straight shooter, this mother of yours. What did she do, and when was she diagnosed with cancer?
My mother was a registered nurse at one of the largest hospitals in the state of New York City, in the New York Queens General Hospital in Queens, New York. And she was diagnosed with cancer in late 2009. And it started off in a colon and it ultimately metastasized and it went various other places. And, she battled and battled for a long time. And then in 2017, she finally lost that battle. And so she was a person that was West Indian descent, born and raised in St. Thomas, Virgin Islands. She was somebody that got married to my father when she was 18 years of age. They had six kids together. I am the youngest of six. And because of the transgressions of my dad, my mother was forced to take on the role of being both parents, as far as I'm concerned. She was the mom that she was, but she was also the parent that went out and worked two jobs, 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, with 1 week's vacation for 20 years.
Whoa.
And so, for me, I always looked at that. And to tie into your first question to start off the interview, that was an incredible source of motivation for me because when I was pushing and pushing and pushing, my dream was to make sure that I made her life better.
Oh,
I couldn't make her life better if I was running the streets. I couldn't make my life better if I was engaging in criminal activity like dealing drugs or something. I couldn't make her life better if I didn't prioritize ultimately receiving an education and building a life for myself. I never thought it would be this, but I definitely had dreams and aspirations. And she was my ultimate source of motivation. She was my driving force for many years.
so how did your mother first react to her diagnosis of cancer? And I want to know how you first heard about it and how did you react?
Well, she called me home. She was in Hollis and she called me home. And my sisters were sitting around sad. And I was like, what happened? And my mother, she said, go talk. My sister said, go talk to mommy. And I walked upstairs and my mother said, I have cancer. And I'm like, what? I'm like, nah, no way. No. She said, stop overreacting. Stop overreacting. She said, I'm not dead. I'm still here. She says, I'll fight to the best of my ability and God will make his decision. That is the way it goes. That was my mother. She was that way. Um, my mother died when I was 49. And I tell people this all the time. I can count on one hand how many times I heard my mother tell me she loves me. One hand. That's it. I knew it every minute and every day of my life
Wow.
because actions showed it all the time. And that has influenced me a lot because you knowing me the way that you do, Pat, you can't just talk to me. and convince me of something. You got to show me. You know how I am. And I've always been that way. And I get that directly from her. She didn't need, she was like, stop being stupid. Of course I love you. What do you think? That's how she would be. And she's very blunt, very matter of fact, but very strong.
So
Very
this strong straight shooter, how did you comfort her? How did you support her? And what was her whole community that did, if she even allowed support?
First of all, she had her daughters, and she was very, very tight with all of my sisters. And so because of that, that was her support base. Of course, she had her sister, my Aunt Rita, who lives in St. Thomas, who loved the dearly. That was her big sister. And you had those five people. She had a cadre of friends and stuff like that, people she used to work with and stuff like that. But primarily it was those five people, her four daughters, her 15 grandchildren, her, and me, of course. But my mother wasn't the mushy kind of person, the hugs and the kisses and I love you all the times and stuff like that. Come and see her, spend time with her, distract her from, things. That's all my mother cared about. My mother she's retired. She wanted to go to the casino and play the slot machines in Atlantic City. She wanted to go shopping when she wanted to go shopping. She wanted to go get her hair done when she wanted to go get her hair done. And she wanted to go on her cruises. It was a very, very big deal for her to be able to go on at least one cruise per year. So over the course I would tell you, from 2005 until she passed away in 2017, I sent my mother on 26 cruises.
Oh,
26 cruises.
and how did that make you feel?
It's everything. I mean, I give you a perfect example. When they gave me my own show, I ultimately signed a contract at the ABC Studios, Columbus Avenue, rather, 66th Street, New York City. I signed it at 3:30. I walked out the building, got in my car, and I drove straight to Queens. I drove to Queens and a police athletic league center. That was where my mother was working part-time to subsidize, her pension. She didn't want to mess with her pension. So what she wanted to do was earn this pocket change and hopefully save up to go on vacations and all of this other stuff, even though I was sending her on a cruise every year, at least two of them actually. And then I drove there. It's on 200th Street, 112th Avenue. And I walked down, I walked by everybody, and my mother was just serving trays and doing all of this other stuff that she was doing. And I grabbed her by the hand. I said, let's go. She was like, what are you talking about? I said, where's your boss? She's like, Stephen, what are you doing? I said, where's your boss? She said, he's right there. Walked over to him and I said, my mother won't be back.
Oh,
I said, this is it. My mother's not working here anymore. Said, thank you for your time. Appreciate you, how you treated her. Thank you so much. But she will not be working here anymore. And
smells like a movie.
my mother's eyes popped out of her head. What's going on? And I took in the car and I drove her down to the house. And she kept saying, Stephen, what's going on? And I said, I just signed a new contract. I said, it's not enough like an NBA player or something like that. It's not that kind of money, but it is over $1 million. I said, I think it's safe to say you don't need to be working anymore. You will not be working anymore. And I handed her a ticket to another cruise to Europe. And I kissed her and I said, I love you. It's my turn now. This is somebody else's turn to be the leader of this household. You go and enjoy your life. And that's what I told
I
her.
knew you had a heart. I don't care what anyone said. I always knew you had a heart.
When you donate to the American Cancer Society, your gift helps fund life-saving research, treatment, and care for someone with cancer. Visit cancer.org/donate and help make a difference. Every donation counts.
Stephen A., what would you tell our audience who have just found out someone, a mother, a parent, a loved one, has just been diagnosed with cancer? You've been through this. Give us your personal advice.
As devastating as it is, you have to remember it's not about you until they're gone. As long as they're there, It's about them. And what you have to remember, when a loved one comes to you and they're diagnosed with such a thing, spirit matters.
Mm,
Your spirit, your enthusiasm, your fervor for life, what you do for them, what makes loved ones, talking about a relationship, so unique, whatever that relationship is that you're touching the lives of people in ways that most people can't. So there's no one outside that can tell you what works for that person. You know that person, and that person knows you. So there's an expectation that they may have from you, and you have to be mindful of delivering on that expectation because they trust that you know them and that you love them and that you care of them, about them enough to get it and to do things that augments and elevates and strengthens them to have the strength to fight what they need to fight.
mm,
And that's what you have to remember most. It's not about you until they're gone. As long as they're here, it's about them. And I remember I also told this story because I've encountered a lot of men who've lost their mothers. And obviously, mothers and women are not the only ones that have cancer. So we pray for everyone that, children, grown-ups, men, women, black, white, Latino, every ethnicity under the sun. We're all children in God's eyes. And to me, but what I say to men is this: what I told them a story my mother told me. My mother said to me in her last few weeks of life, "Why are you looking so sad?" And I said, "What are you talking about? Why I'm looking sad, mommy? You're leaving. You're not going to be here." And she said, "I have prepared you for this. You're grown." She said, "And do you love me?" I said, "Of course I love you." She said, "Because if you truly do, you'll know this is the way it is supposed to be. What you shouldn't wish is that it was reversed. And you're the one that has this cancer, and you're the one that's about to leave me." She said, "You shouldn't wish that on any parent. This is how it's supposed to be.
mm.
We're supposed to go before our children. That's what you have to accept." And I tell every guy that's come up to me, talk to me about losing their mother, because it's just a different experience, man. When you lose your mom. It's I don't know how to explain it. All I could tell you is that I'm not as bad as I used to be, but there isn't a day that goes by that I don't think about her. And there is not a day that goes by that I don't get into that dark place because I miss her so much. It's just that it doesn't extend over an inordinate period of time each day the way that it used to. And I'm able to laugh about a lot of moments that we had together as a family with her as well, as opposed to just lamenting the fact that she's gone.
Stephen A., you have the voice. On television, you're entertaining, you're informative, you're inspirational, you're opinionated. However, what I totally applaud you about is you're using this voice as a cancer advocate. Why?
Because of mommy.
Hmm.
Because anytime I hear the word cancer, that's who I think about. It's a kid, it's an adult, it's a white person, it's a black person, it's a colleague, it's a friend, it's a stranger. It doesn't matter. We're all family. And at the end of the day, we owe it to one another to help as many people as we possibly can. It could be a kind word, a kind gesture. It could be motivational words. It could be just your presence. It could be words of encouragement and support. It could be anything. Every single day, any cancer patient will tell you this. Any person connected to a cancer patient will tell you this. Suddenly, every single moment matters. And there's a difference between being alive and living. You're alive, you're just there, your organs are still working, you're breathing. Okay, that's fine. But that's just one element to it. When you're living, there's a vibrancy that comes with you. There's a claim or a grasp that you reach out for to capture sources of life that inspire you and elevate and motivate you. And so for me, when I think about my mother in that realm, I think about her going into casinos. I thinking about her putting out her hand for money, which she would never do until she acquired cancer, contracted cancer. And she come to me and she give her, and I give her some money for the slot machine, and she put her head down and look back up and look like that, look like that. Like that's all. She never did that. But all of a sudden, she wanted to go to the slot machines, and she wanted to go to on vacation, and she wanted to go on the cruises and all of this other stuff. She wanted to live. She prioritized living more after she had cancer than she did before she contracted it. And what that just says to me is that, it's an appreciation for life. And I owe it to her to make sure that I'm a contributor in a positive way to fighting and battling, this to the end of the day, and to do my part in making that kind of contribution. Certainly, as a human being, I owe that to everyone anyway. But when you've had the kind of mother I had, and I would not be where I am today if it were not for her. She is my everything. There's just no way that I'm going to disappoint her by not trying to give an extended and additional voice uh, to cancer survivors, to cancer patients, to everybody out there to know that I'm a supporter and I'm going to be here. And whatever I can do to bring attention to it, I will do.
My brother, I love you. Thank you so much. Yes, for
Love
sharing.
you, brother.
I love you too.
You take care of yourself. I'll see you soon.
Thank you for joining us, Stephen A. We're going to take a quick break, and American Cancer Society CEO, Dr. Karen Knudsen, will join me for this week's ACS Mission Moment. Stick around.
I love you. I love the sweet potato pie you bring to every family reunion. I love how you're my morning alarm. I can't imagine a Sunday show, night in, night out, or dinner without you. I can't imagine any tomorrow without you in it. So today I say, I love you. Get screened. Regular cancer screening saves lives. Visit cancer.org/getscreened to learn more.
Welcome back to Mind, Body, Spirit Cancer. Here once again to provide some invaluable insights on the topics discussed in this week's episode is American Cancer Society CEO, Dr. Karen Knudsen. Welcome, Dr. K.
Thank you, Pat. And such a pleasure to be here.
Always love having you on the show. And I heard earlier this year you launched a new initiative related to prostate cancer. Can you give us the background on what led to this creation?
Yeah, absolutely. So, every year we look at cancer incidents and cancer mortality across the country, across the 200 different disease types that are cancer. And in this last set of years, we've seen prostate cancer emerge as a real threat to men in the United States. So prostate cancer is the most frequently diagnosed malignancy of men in this country. Let's just put some numbers behind that. This year alone, 2023, almost 1/3 of the new cancer diagnoses will be prostate cancer. And that's not the worst part about it though, Pat. When we look at what's happening, men are being diagnosed at a 4 to 5% year over year increase with more advanced disease. So it's not just that this cancer is happening, but we're catching it entirely too late. And this is why prostate cancer is the second leading cause of cancer death for men in this country. If there's something we know for certain about prostate cancer, it's that early stage prostate cancer can be eliminated, but that late stage disease is intractable. We have no durable cure for advanced prostate cancer. Therefore, it's so critical to get men into screening, to catch this cancer early so that they can actually be cured of their disease. The data tell us that's not happening. So that's the call to arms number one. Call to arms number two is the incredible cancer disparity that happens across the country. So while the statistics I just talked about are for men overall, Black men in this country are disproportionately burdened. Despite equal screening rates for Black and white men, Black men are 70% more likely to be diagnosed with prostate cancer and 2 to 4-fold more likely to die of their disease compared to any other demographic. So this is truly what I call a cancer emergency that we need to address.
That's scary. Those statistics are scary. And your new initiative, what do you call this new initiative, and how's it address those trends, those crazy numbers you just gave us?
Yeah, I mean, it's mind-blowing, Pat. And every year we watch it get worse and worse. And so this is why, the American Cancer Society is poised to shift our resources, grab new partners, and launch something we called Impact. Impact stands for Improving Mortality from Prostate Cancer Together. Emphasis on the T on together. We are looking for partners to help us get this done. We launched earlier this year. And what we are committed to is to using each of the arms of the American Cancer Society to improve mortality. For research, we know we need to understand these cancer disparities better. We need to understand that rise in advanced disease. Through patient support, we know we need to get more men into screening. Right now, only about 33% of eligible men in the United States go for prostate cancer screening. Unless that number rises, we won't catch these cancers earlier and cure men. And then finally, through advocacy, we need to use our advocacy arm to ensure at the state, federal, and local level that we have reduced barriers to prostate cancer screening and prostate cancer care across the country.
Impact, IMPACT. I like that name. Impact. It's energy. Can you share some of the highlights of what you've accomplished this year with Impact and how ACS continues to support this brand new initiative?
Without question. So we were very fortunate to launch the Impact Initiative in January at Howard University in collaboration with their president, Dr. Wayne Frederick, who is just incredible. We had many partners in the room to allow us to fund new prostate cancer research programs, to expand support programs that facilitate quality prostate cancer screening and care, and to identify new policy points that can help us to ensure that more men have access to care. So maybe let's just start there. On the advocacy part, we are a major proponent of legislation an act that's been proposed at the federal level, and that's the PSA Screening for Him Act. And the idea there is to enhance access to prostate cancer screening. Under our patient support concepts through the Impact Initiative, we started a public awareness campaign that's called I Love You, Get Screened. Now that's for all cancers, but prostate cancer is part of that. But we have also put together the beginnings of what's called a roundtable, and that allows us to pull in multiple organizations under the patient support model to help design programs where we can partner to educate primary care physicians and the U.S. public about screening. And then finally, we've trained more than 1,000 health equity ambassadors. These are volunteers to the American Cancer Society. And if our listeners want to get involved in this, please do so and contact us through cancer.org. Health equity ambassadors are key members of communities around the country who get trained about the importance of cancer screening, in this case, prostate cancer screening, and then take that message into their own communities. Finally, at our 24/7 call center, we have special lines for screening. So that if someone's listening today and thinking, I need to find out where I can be screened for prostate cancer in my own community, we can help navigate them to that site. We have no vested interest on where anyone gets cancer care or cancer screening, only that they do so.
Dr. K, one, I want people to go to cancer.org. But two, if you come out with the t-shirts, I love you, get screened. I want one.
Oh, you and me both, Pat. Nobody loves ACS swag more than I do. I think you might have just started a movement right here in the podcast. Trust me, I'm moving that forward.
Beautiful. Thanks for joining us, Dr. K. That's all for this week's episode of Mind, Body, Spirit, Cancer, presented by the American Cancer Society. I would like to once again thank my guests, Stephen A. Smith and Dr. Karen Knudsen, for joining us. For more information on cancer research, advocacy, and patient support for your own or a loved one's cancer journey, please visit us at cancer.org. And don't forget to talk to your doctor about what screenings are right for you. I'm Pat Croce. Thanks for coming with us on this divine adventure. And be sure to follow, rate, and review the show on whatever platform you're listening on. Peace.
The content of this episode is not intended as medical advice, nor should it replace the expertise of a medical cancer care team. Visit cancer.org for more information or call the American Cancer Society National Cancer Information Center at 1-800-227-2345 to speak with a trained cancer information specialist. Mind, Body, Spirit Cancer is executive produced by the American Cancer Society in partnership with Pat Croce, with production services provided by Brand Live.